What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we are shooting out the Splawn Quick Rod with the Splawn Nitro. Let's do it! Alright, hope you guys are doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle, and what I do is I take awesome high gain amps, overdrives, guitar cabinets, speakers, and pickups. I record them with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you guys the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into E standard thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes who spit everywhere when they talk, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! So as the self-proclaimed Splawn superfan here on YouTube, I actually feel kind of bad because I don't really do a lot of Splawn content, and I know a lot of you guys have asked for it. I actually have a bunch of Splawn amps in my possession, and really I'm always kind of wanting to work those amps in, but I've got a constant rotation of things that are coming in and out, so they always kind of get put on the back burner. Well, today I am sadly shipping my Splawn Nitro out to Prasant. I think that's how you pronounce your name. Sorry, bro, if it's not. He is one of my Patreon and Discord members, as well as a subscriber to the channel. And back when I posted my big amp sale a couple weeks ago, he purchased the Nitro off me, and today it's gotta go. So before it goes, I wanted to make a video comparing the two tones because everybody always asks me what the difference is between the Splawn Quick Rod and the Splawn Nitro. To give you guys a quick overview, the Splawn Quick Rod is essentially supposed to be your classic kind of hot rodded Marshall type tones. It's got a clean channel, but it also has 3 gears on it. Gear 1 is kind of like a plexi all the way to a hot rodded plexi. Gear 2 is like an 800 all the way to a hot rod 800. Gear 3 is like a slightly more modern, slightly gainier hot rodded 800. There's not a huge difference between Gear 2 and Gear 3, but it is noticeable. The Quick Rod also has 2 different overdrive modes. It defaults to overdrive 1 when you don't have the pedal plugged in, and that is where we are gonna stay for this video. And the Nitro has a similar feature where it has an overdrive 1, overdrive 2. It defaults to overdrive 1 when you don't have the pedal plugged in. So for all intents and purposes, we're kind of comparing these amps apples to apples on overdrive 1. So where the Quick Rod is kind of your classic take on a hot rodded Marshall 800 circuit with a little bit more openness and a little bit more stiffness than say like Jose Mod's, Friedman's, Bogner's, stuff like that. The Nitro is kind of the modern take on the hot rodded 800 where it's more compressed, it's a lot gainier, it's got a ridiculous amount of low end, and I would say that the EQ structure is a little bit more modern. It's quite a bit more modern, as you guys will see, and as you guys probably heard in that intro track, there's a pretty stark contrast between the two, the way that they sound. I always find myself preferring the Quick Rod circuits because they sound like a classic 800, really open and raw, yet they're much tighter, they're much punchier, and they are much more saturated, whereas the Nitro is very modern. It's got a ton of saturation. The saturation can get out of hand, and my battery just died. So anyways, I am talking way too much to start. That intro clip that you guys heard, I had the Electric Eye Mud Killer boost on out in front of each amp. We have an SM57 on the UK V30 inside this awesome Metzebarba 4x12 cabinet. And then I also have my Balaguer Typhon prototype here with the Hypernova pickups. So we are ready to rip at this point. Let's go ahead and put both amps back to noon. I'm gonna put the Quick Rod back in Gear 2. I'm gonna turn the gain down to 9 o'clock. We are going to take all the EQ controls and put them at noon, including the presence. On the Nitro, I'm gonna do the same thing, but the resonance knob, I'm gonna turn to 0. The resonance really can help the low end get it out of control on the Nitro very quickly. I've already got the gain at 9 o'clock, so I'm just gonna leave it there. That just shows you guys how much saturation this amp has on its own. Let's turn the boost off and let's hear each amp. All right, so as you guys can tell, huge difference between the two right off the bat. The Quick Rod is much more mid-forward, much more open, and a lot less saturation, whereas the Nitro has a ton of saturation, a lot of low end, but it's very muffled up top and in the high mid. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring the presence up quite a bit on the Splawn. I'm gonna keep saying on the Splawn. That's not gonna work. On the Nitro, to try and match the brightness of the Quick Rod, because the Quick Rod's more in line with a natural tone. So as you can tell, the Nitro's not gonna do the low gain thing very well because we've got our gain at just under 9 o'clock and it's already pretty saturated. I'm gonna bump it down. So as you guys can tell, the Quick Rod has much more of that natural, open, martial kind of growl, that kerrang as a lot of people describe it. There's just an upper mid thing going on that when you hit certain chords, it just really rings out. The Nitro sounds pretty muffled in comparison. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna bring up the mids and the treble on the Nitro to try to get it to come alive a little more. So I had to run the gain quite a bit lower on the Nitro to get it to that kind of classic rock point, but even so, it just doesn't sound that great for that stuff. So we're gonna put it back up to 9 o'clock. All right, so let's go ahead and switch over to the Quick Rod and let's bump that gain up to 11 o'clock. So at our current settings, the Nitro has way more low end and it's got way more saturation going on, but it's kind of muffled sounding in my opinion. It doesn't sound all that great. So I'm going to bump the presence even more. And I'm actually gonna roll the bass back a little bit to try and get that low end tamed. All right, we're gonna go ahead and push that gain on the Quick Rod on gear 2 in order to try and meet the saturation level of the Nitro. All right, so as it is now, the Nitro has a little bit of more of aggressive, it's kind of like an upper mid thing, but it's almost in a position where it's not pleasant to my ears personally. You guys may like it more than I do, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not saying that either one is better or worse. I'm just giving you my own personal opinion. I like the mids and where they sit on the Quick Rod much better. They're kind of growly on the Nitro, but when you really start to push the amp, that frequency sticks out way too much and it's hard to get the amp to sound balanced, and that's always been my issue with it. So as you can see, this is kind of like a similar tone for each amp. I'm gonna go ahead and push the gain even more on gear 2 for the Quick Rod because it's still just not hitting that same saturation level that the Nitro is hitting with the gain on 9 o'clock. We've got it at 3 o'clock on gear 2 on the Quick Rod, but on the Nitro we're at 9 o'clock and it's a pretty big difference in the level of saturation. All right, so yeah, as you can tell, pretty big difference there. I'm gonna go ahead and switch the mode on the Quick Rod over to gain 3, or gear 3, I'm sorry. Let's bump the gain back just a little bit. All right, so they're pretty close now. I'm gonna bump the gain a little more on the quick rod. But as you can hear, the Nitro has much more of like a guttural, more modern low mid thing going. The quick rod definitely has a stiff feel to it, whereas the Nitro has a more fluid feel. It's easier to play, it's more compressed and saturated. So with both of these amps, I've talked about the treble at 0 trick before on Splawns. When you turn the treble to 0, that really brings the mids forward on the amp, and it works on both amps. So let's hear what difference that makes to have the treble at 0 on both amps. Okay, so with the Nitro, there is not enough presence on top to make it sound present with the treble at 0, unfortunately, so it doesn't work as well unless you were to run an EQ in the loop. But on the quick rod, I really feel like it just kind of brings the amp to life a little bit more. It makes it sound a little bit bigger and wider overall without making the mids too forward, and you can always dial them down with the mid control. So these amps, just in these settings, sound pretty drastically different from each other. I've got the mids maxed out on the Nitro, whereas on the quick rod, I actually have them dialed under noon. We're gonna pull a little bit more presence up too to get some top end sizzle out of it. And this amp, guys, both amps are very, very tight, but the tightness and the punchiness of the quick rod with no boost in front of it is something that I've always loved about it, and it takes a boost super well without removing a lot of the low end. So the Nitro, I love the low end of the Nitro, but it gets out of hand really quickly, so. On your guys' end, and as well as here in the room, there's probably gonna be a perceived volume difference. Even though they are roughly the same volume level, the mids on the quick rod are just way more forward and way more spiky. So it's gonna stick out a lot more. Whereas the Nitro, it's pretty subdued, even with the mids all the way down, or all the way at 10, it's very subdued. In the mids, it's kind of lacking those frequencies that really cut. I feel like this would fare better in a multi-guitar mix. I don't think that that the Nitro would have any problem cutting in a single guitar mix, but if you've got another guitarist that has 5150 or another Marshall variant of some sort, you're probably gonna be filling in the low end frequencies more than you're gonna be mixing in with the other guitar. All right, so let's go ahead and kick in a boost on both amps and see how they react to a boost. We're just gonna kick in the standard TS9 Tube Screamer. since you guys will be more familiar with that. So just way more mid forward on the quick rod, but it still has plenty of low end, and you can kind of remove a lot of those mids if you want to. The Nitro, I've got the mids at 10, and it still just does not seem like it has enough mids to really cut. The presence is also dimed. The treble's at like 6. We could probably turn down the bass down a little bit and see if that kind of brings the other frequencies forward. I'm going to drop this down into drop C, or D standard, I'm sorry, real quick, and we'll compare the amps in D standard. I'll grab a guitar with an EMG, play one more riff, and then we'll call it a day. Okay guys, so at first I preferred the Nitro when we went down to the drop tuning by quite a bit because the mids sounded kind of weird and boxy on the quick rod, but then I put the treble back up to about 11 o'clock and that kind of removed that mid widening effect from the amp, and then I bumped the mids back up and I was back to liking the quick rod more personally. Overall, I think it's a more cutting amp, a more balanced amp. If you really like smoother tones with big low end and more saturation and compression, you'll probably dig the Nitro a lot more. If you like brighter cutting tones with that kind of classic Marshall bite and that Marshall upper mid-range thing, but with more low end and tightness, you'll probably gravitate towards the quick rod like I do. One more, I'm gonna grab an EMG loaded guitar just to show you guys how they react to actives. Alright guys, that's going to do it for me today on the shootout of the Splawn Nitro and the Splawn Quick Rod. What did you guys think? Please let me know down in the comments. Which one did you prefer? If you own either of these amps, what are your thoughts and opinions on it? Or if you've played it before, how did you get along with it? Drop those comments down below and I will be sure to meet you guys there to chat about it. In the description of this video are all my support links, including my Sweetwater affiliate link, my Patreon, and the links to my community, including my Discord server and Facebook group. Go down there, click all those links, help your boy out. I would greatly appreciate it. I would love to have you guys around more often. If you liked the video, hit the like button on the way out. Consider subscribing so you don't miss anything else. This is Kyle again. Kyle here again. What's my tagline at the end? I don't know. Bye.
You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.